I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently, a podcast where we explore the ins and outs of what becomes possible when we're willing to think, do, and show up differently to the moments of our everyday lives. Today, I have a special episode for you. It's a little bit different. A couple of episodes back, in fact, it was number 60, I had a conversation with Jennifer Doyle Vancil, who's a strengths-based career coach. And she talked about the amazing Clifton Strengths Finder. Today, I want to share my personal conversation with her and the process I went through in discovering my strengths. I hope that my inquiry will inspire you to make your own.
Hey, Carla, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about strengths today and how people can work from their strengths. And I'm super excited that you let me talk to you about yours and that you took the Clifton Strengths Assessment. So it'll be fun to talk through the results.
Yeah, I'm so excited too, Jennifer. This is an honor to have you on the podcast. And yeah, this is a little different episode than I've ever done. So I'm going to let you kind of lead the conversation. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to take the strengths again. Like we had talked about, I'd done it years ago, and like this was super insightful, and I'm really excited to learn more. So take it away.
Awesome. So, what we're doing is we're looking at the results of the Clifton Strengths Assessment, which used to be called Strengths Finder. So if anyone listening took it knowing the word Strengths Finder, it's the same assessment. It's produced by the company called Gallup. So I have a certification called Gallup Certified Strengths Coach. It just means that I've read a lot about this and gone to a lot of training about it. And the reason I was motivated to do that was because when I first took the Strengths Finder, which is what it was called years ago, it changed my life. And that's a huge statement to say. But understanding my strengths as my strengths literally changed my outlook on life. I think that growing up, I had seen certain things about myself and noticed things that maybe sometimes got in my way, or sometimes people would notice things about me that they would say, well, you always like to talk, or you always prioritizing other people, or you're always too loud, or you're always thinking about such big ideas. Why can't you just be more realistic? So many different comments that kind of came across as maybe negative to me, and almost like, well, you're just too much. And it was so amazing to me when I saw the results of my strengths assessment. And I saw my top 5, which are communication, connectedness, maximizer, woo, and relator, these words that come out of the assessment, and started to understand that those were the things that could potentially be seen as the best things about me, or the things that came most naturally to me. And that if I actually stepped into them, they could be my strengths, not my weaknesses. So it was a totally different mindset for me to embrace that, wait a minute, these things that come naturally to me aren't my worst. These could be my best. It was a mindset shift for me.
Wow. I mean, I can feel the magnitude of that just as you're describing it. Yeah.
So it's so exciting to me to have a chance to talk with you about your strengths, because I know how much it meant to me. So I'm really curious. You took this assessment and you did the whole 34 assessment. So for those people listening, you can take this assessment online and get just the top 5 results. You can also get all of the different themes of talent from 1 to 34 in order. So the way the assessment works is it asks you questions, what's like you and what's not like you. And it asks you to do them really quickly. And it's actually timed. So you have to kind of go with your first instinct. And it's not only measuring what you say, but how fast you say it, and how much do you drag things to the right or to the left. So it's actually looking at how clear you are on it, how sure you are of it. That's actually part of the assessment. Does that surprise you?
Totally. Well, I didn't know that it was measuring the speed at which you answered them. That's fascinating. Because I know there were some where I was like, it was just instinctual, like I clicked it so fast, and others where I hesitated. So that's fascinating.
So apparently that goes into the algorithm, and it actually
Wow.
says something about you, about how much you agree with it. I come out with communication number one. I'm pretty sure anything like, do you like to explain things? Do you like to talk about things? Like, I'm sure I just answered it really quickly. Whereas other things, maybe I took more time to think about it. And you must have done the same thing.
Yeah. So for people
So
listening, we'll provide a link in the show notes to where they can take this assessment through you, correct?
yeah, there's a link on my website, and you can sign up and take the assessment.
Okay,
And
great.
it's really amazing. So I think people get a lot of good benefit from it. So
Yeah.
so when you get your results, you actually get the report right away from Gallup. The All 34 assessment has about a 20-page report. It's pretty significant, and it'll show you what's high for you and what's low. And what's high is really those things that come naturally to you, and what's low are the things that really don't describe you very much. So when you see what's at the bottom, it's really like, these are the things that really aren't much a part of you naturally. For example, I'm not very competitive, and competition is one of my bottom. So having something low doesn't mean that you're not good at it. It just means that it's just not something that comes naturally to you. I am not naturally a competitive person. It's not a weakness. It's not a detriment. Not being competitive hasn't really hurt my life very much. It's just true. So we're going to look at your 34 and kind of what's high and what's low. Now, sometimes when things are low, it can get in our way, and we need to compensate with what's high. But most of the time, you really can't have the things at the bottom be at the top. You can't really make them be at the top. It just really isn't very much like you.
It's like,
What do you think about that idea?
well, I love that idea because I think so often, we can get focused on what we're not good at and spend a lot of time and emotional, mental energy focused on that, when what you're saying is we can lean into our strengths. And even then, some of the things that, like you said, we maybe have been labeled with that we thought was maybe a bad thing is actually our superpower. And so I think I totally believe that. And when I looked at the 34, I thought of you because you had told me that about competition, and competition is one of my lower ones too. And I knew that when you said it. But that's just, it's in my nature. I can't force that. I can't, I can't force that. It's not natural for me. Yeah.
Right. Well, one of the things that happens to people a lot is they realize that they're in a job situation or a volunteer situation, some kind of life situation where they're working from the bottom. And that's where a lot of burnout
Mm.
comes for a lot of folks. So, so as we talk through yours, I mean, let's pay attention to, hopefully the things at the top are those things that you get to do all day. And the things at the bottom, hopefully, are not a big part of your life. And if they are, then that might be interesting to see if there's any burnout coming from that.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we look at the top, I mean, the very top strength, I mean, you have empathy number one, which is a relationship building talent. And that certainly, from me knowing you, I would say is a pretty big part of who you are. Talk to me about empathy. How does that show up in your life?
Yeah, so I would not. It's so funny because I don't think I would have guessed that would have been my top. But when I read what it says, I was like, wow. It is so very true. And I'll give you a really funny example. So, one of the things that it says in the description under empathy is that you can feel, you sense emotions of those around you, and you can feel what they're feeling as though those feelings are your own. So, my boys and my husband, like, this is a story in our family, but one time we were in the living room watching a movie together. We were watching Soul Surfer, if you've ever seen it. And she gets bit by the shark, and they're like they're waiting for the ambulance to arrive, and they're like at some remote beach as far as I can remember. And when I watch a movie, I get so into the movie and the emotion of what's happening in the movie that in this particular situation, I was waving down the ambulance. The ambulance is driving to the scene. And my family just like, we laugh about that over and over again. But that, I think, describes the empathy part of me.
It just comes so naturally. You don't even realize.
It's really hard for me to watch certain movies before that reason, because I literally feel like I'm living the movie.
Yeah. How has it helped you though, when you think about your coaching and your work, having empathy for the people that you're serving, the people that you're talking to, even on this podcast? How does that serve you well? How is it a superpower, like you said?
Yeah. Oh, it for sure is. And it's so tied with the work that I do. Because I do feel people. I feel their emotion. And this is something I've really had to learn over the years, because early on I would feel so much and I wouldn't know how to manage that. And it would take my energy or drain my energy. And now, 10 years into coaching, I'm able to really hold very powerful space for people to, one, I can sense the emotion. And so I know what questions to ask. I know where to go. I know where to lead people and really honor that and really hold space for it. So people feel very comfortable sharing things they've never shared with anybody, and just a space to hold that. And that is really liberating for people.
It's amazing. I love how you turned that around and you said, this comes naturally to me. And then now I'm using it for this purpose that I have for coaching people and holding space. So understanding that about yourself, it comes naturally. You probably can't help it. You just, cry at the movie or wave down the emergency vehicles. But that's something that comes naturally. But the fact that you've been able to create your work around leveraging what comes naturally to you, I'm guessing that makes it come pretty easy. You still have to work at it, but it comes naturally to you.
Oh, it does. It's just there. It's not even something I have to try to do or think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. You've got such an amazing set of top strengths. I'd love to just talk through these with you. The next one is focus. Really having focus really high. That's an executing talent, which means it's a talent that helps you get things done, stay on track, prioritize. Tell me what that looks like for you.
That has really helped me in every facet of my life. Like, if I look to any change that I've wanted to create in my life, it's come from this, inside the description, it says, like, where am I headed? Like, you ask yourself this every day. And I do. I have kind of a vision in every facet of my life that's kind of like this guiding pillar of where I'm headed. And so that helps me. Like, I think about that on the daily, and it helps me line up, who I'm going to be and how I'm going to show up and what I'm going to do today. And that's helped me realize the marriage I have today in my life, the way I wanted to parent my children, the business I wanted to create. So it's really helped me navigate major stages of my life. And when I saw this one, it's so ingrained in everything I do. And it's also ingrained in the work that I do with my clients. So helping them create that vision and create that focus so that they can get their thinking and their actions and behaviors in alignment with that. And when you start to line all of that up, you can create a lot of traction in your life over time. So it's a huge, huge piece.
I love what you said about, because it comes naturally to you, you can use it to help others. There's a lot of folks that have focus very low. And so knowing what to prioritize is something that not everyone has the ability to do. In fact, that's one of my lower ones. And it's funny, I realize now, as you and I have known each other as colleagues, one of the things I really value about you is that you prioritize very clearly, like what's important, what are we going to do next time, what's the goal. You really focus on that. And I didn't realize until we just talked through that what that was about you, but I'm drawn to it because you do that so naturally. And I really imagine that you're really good at helping other people do it. I know it's helped me just talking with you.
Yeah, it's, in the description here, it talks about, when others start to wander down other avenues, you can bring them back to the main road. And I think that's a huge role in what I do. It can probably also be a little bit annoying to the people that are very close to me. I'm just seeing that, right? Because I didn't realize this was one of my top strengths, right? Like I know it's there and it's part of my everyday life, but now knowing that this is like my number 2 brings like this whole other level of clarity and maybe just awareness to also not expect other people to have that. Like, just like what you said, not everybody has this strength. And I think sometimes I can get frustrated when people don't have that. And so I think this gives me greater awareness to have empathy and understanding that this isn't everybody's strength. So that was insightful.
It's pretty amazing to realize the statistical likelihood of having any top 5 appear out of 34 different themes of talent that can appear in the top. The likelihood of having any top 5 is 1 in 278,000. And the statistical likelihood of having a certain top 5 appear in the exact order they appear is 1 in 33 million.
So that means everyone is like, that's fascinating.
And if you do the statistics on the likelihood of all 34 appearing in that order of 34, that's just you. I mean, that's statistically not in common with anyone. So when you get your report, you see a little DNA strand on there. And that's really kind of a nod to that uniqueness of this. And sometimes in our slides, when I present on this, there's a thumbprint.
I was just going to say.
This is unique. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like fascinating. Wow.
So we can't expect everyone to have our same top strengths. We just simply don't. And I think one of the things that's really powerful about this work is knowing ourselves, but also having a lot of respect and grace for others and understanding that what we have high, others have low. And that allows us to partner really effectively. So we use this Clifton Strengths Assessment a lot with teams. I'll go into companies and work with groups. Also working with individuals who are making decisions about career and life and coaching, that can be really valuable too. There's a lot of nuances to this, but I think the point that we're making right now is what's high for you is low for others. And very often it's low for others who are right in your sphere. So I actually love to see people on teams take it, love to see people in families take it, because it really helps to promote understanding.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. So how can we work together instead of be frustrated by our differences? I know in coaching a lot, the same thing holds true for values. Like I will say to clients, like sometimes you're rubbing up against somebody else's values, and that can create a lot of frustration because as humans, we're expecting other people to have the same values we have. And it's very similar here. Like we might be expecting people to show up with the same strengths. So it does provide just such a greater understanding and awareness to relate to people.
Absolutely. And your next one really speaks to that. You even said, relating to people is one of your goals. And we're talking about that. It makes a lot of sense that we're talking about how this helps relationships. I also share this one in my top 5. Relator is your number 3. And Relator is a real focus on relationships. It is a relationship building talent. But it's really about developing close relationships with others and working together with friends to achieve a goal. And that's the definition according to the Gallup company who produces this. How do you see that play out in your life, working closely with others to achieve a goal and developing deep relationships?
Yeah, well, I thought that was interesting too, just because it makes sense, you and I, in our relationship. Like, we did certainly connect on Relator. I know that there's lots of things I appreciate about you because of that. And I think we both value that one-on-one connection. I have often made myself wrong in my life, because I really do value more intimate settings. I'd rather have lunch with one person or one friend than 3 or 5 friends. I mean, if I had a choice, I will always choose to have a one-on-one lunch. So I do. When reading that, it really brought a lot of. I just that was insightful to see that you draw strength from being with close friends and really developing those. So I have no interest in surface relationships, those tire me. I really crave that depth when I'm in a friendship or a relationship. I want to know your heart. I want to know your mind. I want to know your soul. I want to know all of it. That brings so much meaning to a relationship. And so that was very insightful too.
When I think about coaching, one of the things that you've shared with me, as my colleague, is that you like to do packages of sessions with people because you want to talk with them more than once and you want to go deeper with them. That makes perfect sense as a relator. It's not a transactional thing. People just email you questions and you email answers back and that's it. We're done. That is not the role of a coach. A coach is someone who walks with you, gets to know you, asks those deep questions. So the relator part of you probably just absolutely lights up when you get to talk to someone for the 5th or 6th time.
Oh, it does. Or connecting with a past client, that we've traveled such a really intimate journey together. And a lot of times people will, suggest to me you should do group coaching. And I have done group coaching, but it is not my preference, and probably for this reason.
Mm-hmm. I totally understand. It's interesting. Some assessments kind of broad brush things like this, where they say, well, you're a people person or you're a more task-oriented person. But this aspect of relationship building is very unique to that one-on-one and that deep connection. So there's other aspects of relationship building that are lower for you and lower for other people. But this unique aspect of the one-on-one, deep, meaningful, longer term connection is that quality that's showing up really high for you.
Yes. It also gives me, sometimes in my mind, it's oh, I should have more friends, or, I can judge myself for that. And this sort of gives me peace about that. It makes sense why I enjoy a fewer number that are really deep in quality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it would be important for anybody working with you to know that, and for people close to you to understand that. And I think about the combination of focus and relator. You're probably pretty focused on the relationships that really, really matter to you at any given time.
That's totally true. Yeah, I mean, relationships
It's interesting to think how they work together.
Yeah, I mean, because when we talk about the pillars that kind of guide my life and all the decisions and choices and how I spend my time, those key relationships in my life play a huge role in how I make choices with my time and energy.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing that speaks to your next one too, because number 4 came up as belief. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But having high belief really means that you do have some guiding principles that direct your life. And you just said something about key pillars that guide you. I'm not surprised to hear you say that, because you have belief so high. What kind of beliefs guide your life and your work?
Yeah, so faith is right there at the top. My faith plays a huge role in my life, and is one of my pillars that ties into everything. Staying connected and making sure that I am connected to God and taking time to be connected to God and pray and grow my faith and spirituality is a huge pillar. Family would be the next pillar. Family plays a huge role in my life and is something that is constantly at the forefront of my mind and guided how I built a business so that I could be the mom I want to be and be the wife I want to be and have time and space to make sure that those priorities are upheld too. And, you know, having an extraordinary marriage has been a pillar of my life. I was married and divorced, and that was a huge pivot point in my life, and really creating a marriage that could thrive and grow over time has just been a guiding pillar my entire life. And I think my business is probably another pillar, just a desire to impact and make a difference and grow and stretch myself as an entrepreneur and my voice and all of those things, a whole nother pillar. So yes, there's definitely pillars that guide my life on the daily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, it's not the same for everyone. You know, for some people, belief is lower and they may have faith or guiding principles, but they may not make decisions based on them quite as easily or quite as quickly as you do. I mean, you just absolutely said there are pillars that guide my life. Not everyone is guided by principles as much as people who have high belief. So it's interesting always to ask people, you know, are there beliefs that guide you? Do you have some principles that you live by? I think people with high beliefs sometimes are surprised when people don't have that as much, but they have other things that are guiding them. Maybe it's a vision for the future. Maybe it's a strategy. Maybe it's some other goal. I mean, everybody's driven by something.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But for you, being able to articulate those is just really powerful. It's fun to hear you say that. I think neat for your listeners to hear what you're about and what you stand for. And there's so much wonderful authenticity in that. It's a really special thing that coaching really allows you to be authentic and then help other people be their authentic self as well. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for doing this. This is, it really, as I went through all 5, and I know we haven't talked about the last one, but it makes me really realize why the work I do is so important and means so much and gives me so much energy because I'm able to use all of these really powerfully every day.
Amazing. Well, and the last one in the top 5 is not the last one. It's number 5 out of 34. So it's very, very high is responsibility. And that is just a really powerful strength that is an executing talent. And it allows you to keep your word, to do what you say you're going to do and to follow through with promises. How do you do that with so much going on? How do you decide what you're going to take on and what you're not going to take on?
It all goes back to the pillars. It all goes back to the vision. And it goes back to, like making sure that I am upholding those pillars. So if one is going to be at stake, I'm kind of always filtering things I take on. And it doesn't mean I execute this perfectly because I've certainly taken on things and then realized like, whoa, that doesn't fit or that doesn't work well. And so it's been a learning process, but I definitely kind of filter anything new that I'm going to take on through these filters. And so that helps me to really decide like if it's something that aligns or doesn't align. And it's usually pretty clear. But I also am curious about this one because I feel like this strength in particular can also be a weakness for me. And so I'm like, do you find that with the strengths that like when they're overused, they can become a weakness?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a really important way of thinking about weakness in the strengths philosophy, and that is that idea of overuse. So there's a really great image that I love to share with people, that a colleague shared with me, and it's an image of a pot of boiling water. And so if you think about if you're going to cook some pasta and you put that in the pot of water and it's simmering nicely, it's going to cook your dinner and you're going to have spaghetti and it's all going to be well. So when you're using your strength at the right temperature, it's good, it's effective. Now, if you turn that heat up too much, so turning the heat up is, for people, it's stress, it's overload, it's overwhelm, it's grief, it's too much change, it's huge life transition. I mean, the heat can get turned up in our lives in a lot of different ways. So when that heat gets turned up too high, you think about that pot of boiling water with the pasta, and it overloads. And you remember seeing that on your stove. I'm sure we've all done that. You get this white, sticky mess, right? And it's just sticky and messy, and it's like glue, and you've got to, it doesn't work well, and it overloads you, and it boils over. We all have days where we use it too much. My communication gets louder sometimes if I'm under stress. And we all have things that get overloaded. So if you think about that responsibility, like you do what you say you're going to do, you say yes to things. Your yes means yes. But sometimes in stress, you can easily say yes to too many things, or work so hard that you're working late into the night because you promised you would get something done. I mean, it can look a lot of ways, but it's that overuse, that boiling over. And it's usually when the heat gets turned up, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. So I think the next strength after 5 was achiever on mine. So I feel like the achiever and this responsibility can get very overused in my life. And so I'll give you an example, but just yesterday, I've been really working on learning to turn the heat down, as you just described. Like, I wouldn't have used those words, but it's perfect, on like overworking, because that's definitely a place I can fall into because I love what I do. And so it feels like, I'm just love this. But what happens is, even when you love doing something, if you overdo it, I get tired and I lose energy, and it's draining and stressful. So just yesterday, I was really looking at this, and I had a list after the day was over, like 5 o'clock. I still have a list of things I need to do. And my mind is telling me, just do a few more. You'll feel better. And I realized, like, that is an absolute lie. And I had to look at the list and realize that none of it had to get done last night. And I decided to set the list down. And my commitment is to do that more and more of the time, because I'm really realizing the impact it has on my energy.
Mm-hmm. Such a great point. Turning the heat down is such a powerful image. I love it. The other piece of that I think is worth noting is, if you turn the heat down too much and you don't leverage your natural talent and you just kind of deny it, like if you only see the negative of it, like, well, I just work too hard. People will say that they're workaholics or they take on too much. And so they just say, I'm just not going to take anything on. I'm just going to stop committing to things. And you've turned the heat down so much that you've got cold water and you can't cook anything. You can't be effective in any way if you're not using your natural talents and allowing them to be a strength and not a weakness. So our talents grow into strengths when we consciously try to aim them at what we're working on, when we really understand that we can use it in a healthy and productive manner, when we turn that heat up to the right level so that it's simmering really effectively and not allow it to boil over. But we also don't want to not use it at all. I mean, it's so important for you to know that you get a lot of joy out of checking things off and achieving things and committing to things.
Yes, and following through on that commitment and honoring my word. I can see how it would be equally as energy draining if I wasn't using that. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
it's so powerful to see what's high for you. And it's really been fun for me as your colleague to work with you and then to get to see the results of your assessment. And yeah, this has been so much fun to talk through. Thanks for giving me the pleasure of talking through this with you. And I hope that other people listening will think about taking the Clifton Strengths Assessment. It's a really powerful tool, whether you're just trying to understand more about yourself or trying to understand more about others on your team or in your family or in your life somewhere. It's a really powerful tool. I'm glad you took it.
I'm so glad too. And I just want to thank you because as we've gotten to know each other, I just knew this would be such a powerful topic for people listening. And it's just another tool, right, for our life tool set that can really help you start to lean into those strengths. And I just want to thank you for going through mine with me because this was really insightful. And gosh, we might have to do this again.
I'm really glad we recorded it because it's really fun to hear your reactions, as we talk through it. And we haven't even talked about the bottom yet. So
I
there's more to
know.
come.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks, Carla.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you love listening to this podcast, may I ask you to leave a review in Apple Podcasts. These mean so much to me, and I read every one. They are a great source of fuel for me as I am creating these episodes. If you want to hear more conversations like this, hit follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app and help me spread the word. If this episode could impact someone you know, please share it and pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.